Hi everyone, my name is Mark Moikins from Big Mountain Studio. This is part 4 of a 4-part series on Supernova Studio. So if you've been following along, then you probably have a pretty good idea on how Supernova works. So in this video, we're going to download a mobile UI kit from the internet and use it as an example of putting together an app. Okay, this is the UI kit that I'm going to download, and I found it on UpLabs, and it looks like it's from Kuldeep Sharma. So if you guys want to follow along, I'll include the link in the description below. And to let you know, for UpLabs, you do have to be logged in before you can download. So I am logged in. I'm going to download now. Okay, it should be in my downloads folder. So the first thing I want to do after I download is I want to open up the sketch file first and inspect it in Sketch before I bring it into Supernova Studio. Because as you learned from the previous videos, there are some things that can greatly assist the import process into Supernova Studio. So let's just open up this sketch file and take a look at it. Okay, in Sketch, a good thing that you can do is you can just hit Command 1 to view the whole thing all at one time. And we can see there's a lot of screens that make up this UI kit. So let's zoom in and take a look here. Okay, so we have some screens here. It's pretty well organized. And let's just click on some of these components just to make sure they're grouped up the way we want them to be. Okay, so let's click on this button. We see it's part of this group 5. So if we click on that, we have another group, and inside that group, we have the text. And then this is the background of the button. Okay, so everything looks good. We could probably just get away with just this one group. This text probably doesn't have to be in its own group. We could probably take that out and then just delete that since we don't need it. And then this will represent our whole button, the text and this background here. So it'd be nice to rename it because then when you import it into Supernova, it'll have a recognizable name. And when we convert it to a button, it'll use that name that we give it here in Sketch. And then when we export it to a development environment, it'll use that name and then apply some kind of naming convention to it for the environment that you're exporting it to. So if it's like an Xcode project, it'll name the button Sign In Button. So let's just call this Sign In. And this is actually going to be a button too, right? And we can see it's in a group that's in a group. So there's a lot of groups. We probably don't need all these different groups. So let's clean that up, take that out. And we could just leave it as create new account. That name's fine. Then we have other elements that are just text. And this, except for this looks like it's, what is this? Oh, it's a bunch of paths. So it's not text. It's just a bunch of vector paths that make up the word memento. And then probably this is your logo with all the different paths combined together. Okay, that's fine. And I'll give this a different name. So we'll call this the memento logo. All right. So what I did on this first screen, you'll probably want to do with all the other screens before you import them. Just kind of go in and clean them up. We have a navigation bar up here, so we want to make sure, that is all grouped up together. There's nothing outside of that. And that actually does look good. I'm just going to rename this nav bar. We have our text fields and see group 5, copy 3. It's not very descriptive. So you'll want to rename all those so it's something more descriptive. Now here, it says it's a group and it's got the text. It's an unnecessary group. Supernova is pretty smart and it will remove things that it won't need. So maybe we can just leave it like that. But let's rename this right here. We'll call this username. And then they have their password. So let's rename that. And we have a button here. Let's just call this a reset password. Okay. All right, that looks fine. This is just text up here. So let's just start with those two screens. If I go through all of these screens and do what I did here, it's going to take up a lot of time. So we'll just start with these two screens first. And I'm going to save that. Now I notice we do have some missing fonts too. I think I'm just going to skip them for now. Now let's open up Supernova and import this document. Okay, since it's a Sketch document, we'll just click on Import from Sketch. And if we go to Downloads, it is right here. Okay, we have a ton of screens that we can import, but let's just import the first two that we modified. Okay, everything is looking good. Now the first thing I want to do is I want to identify these components. So I'll just click on this tab right here. And as you can see, this is not a button yet. So I want to right click and say convert to a button. All right. Now this text right here, it shows up as just a label, but I'm going to convert this text to a button too. And remember, there's 3 different ways that I know of in Supernova Studio that you can convert things to components. I can right click it here. I can also right click it here and convert it to a component. Or I can also come to the properties and change it from a label to a button. There we go. Now we have a button. Now, one of the things I want to do is I might want to resize this button because when it gets exported, you see this bounding rectangle here? That's going to be the size of the button. And it might be harder for someone to tap on because it's a small hit area, right? So we want to expand this out a little bit. So let's do that. Let's look at the size of this button here. We'll make it the same as this. So this is 311 by 48. So let's do the same thing here. Just to keep it consistent. And then we will position it in the center. I think it was about here. And the next thing I might do is set those constraints to make sure that when I change different size devices, that, these buttons are always in the center and they're not going off the screen. Because I think if I preview right now and I change this to, say, like an iPhone SE, you see one of the buttons disappeared completely. And this one, the button is pretty close to the edges. If I go to a larger phone, yeah, you see everything is just moving around. And so I want to fix that first. So let's go here, go back to iPhone 8. This looks like the same size as it was in Sketch. So what I'm going to do now, let's go back in the edit mode, is remember these pink dots right here? That's what I'm going to use. So we want to keep this far from the bottom, and same with this copyright. So let's change that, maybe move this down just a little bit more. And then I'm going to set these 2 dots here. So if it becomes a smaller device or a bigger device, it doesn't go off the screen and it's not too small on a larger device. And then I think I'll reposition this sign in button too. I'll have it come down here. And instead of being stuck to the top, I'm going to undo that one and just constrain it to the bottom and also do the sides here. All right, that should work. For this logo, that looks fine. It's this far from the top. That's totally fine. I noticed there's a header here. I didn't notice that in this sketch document. Let's take a look. Oh, there totally was one. Yeah, I didn't even notice it. We probably don't need that. So I'm going to delete it. And then for this logo, yeah, that looks fine. And for this turned into an image because it was a bunch of vectors all together. So that turned it into one image. That's pretty cool. It's smart enough to do that. And I think this is fine too with that dot. Everything's constrained. So now if everything gets smaller, it's going to get smaller right in the center here and reduce this white space. So let's just test that out, see how it looks. Yeah, that looks fine. And it should expand from the center. Now it looks good too. All right, good. Everything's looking fine there. So let's change that back to iPhone 8. Okay, everything looks fine. And you'd probably go through and do the same thing here. So when you resize it, you just want to make sure everything still looks fine. But right now, you notice some of the things are going off the screen and disappearing. So you just want to check these buttons. We go back in the edit mode here. Check these buttons and just make sure where the constraints are here. Like this one, we can change this so it stays more closer to the bottom. Oh, this is still a label actually. Let's convert this to a button and we'll resize it. Same as this one, 311 by 48. And we'll put that closer to the bottom. And I think we'll do the same thing with this button here. Okay. Now, maybe we want an animation too. So we can animate this logo, kind of like we did in the previous videos, right? So you can just right click and add a template animation. Maybe we want it to slide in and we'll have it slide in from the top. So we can just kind of preview it here. You can grab this red line and see how it would appear. So just slide in from the top. Yeah, that's kind of slow, right? So let's speed that up. We'll just shorten it here. Maybe, yeah. Yeah, I don't really like that animation. Let's try a different one. Let's have it bounce in from the top. All right, see what that looks like. Yeah, there we go. That looks better. I kind of like that. It just kind of falls in. What we'll have to do is get rid of the old animation too, though. So let's click on that and delete that. Okay, good. So that should be the only animation that we have on this guy. And just check it one last time here. Yeah, that's good. Okay, good. Okay, now let's move on to navigation. Now, as you learned in the earlier video, you can right click here and say push with, and then we can respond to these two buttons. We can either have the sign in, go to some other screen, or create new account, go to another screen. Well, right now we only have the sign in screen, so let's start from that, and we'll just go over to this screen. So let's test the navigation, see how that works. I'm just going to double click, it'll get rid of the animation timeline down there, and then we'll click on preview and see how it works. All right, good. Okay, so let's go back to the first screen, and we see this button here, create new account, but we don't have a screen in our project that represents this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to Sketch. I'm going to find this screen, create new account, and then I'm going to pull it in. But first what I'm going to do is I'm going to save my Supernova document, and we'll call this Memento project. Okay, now I'll go back to Sketch, and we want the create new, that's a password, create account. Here we go. So I'm going to identify some of these components here. Header, I'll just call that navbar. We have some text fields here. We have email, password, and confirm password. Okay. And then we have a proceed button. And you see, these are all good because they're all in groups. So the designer who did this maybe unintentionally really helped us out by grouping everything. What is this? Looks like another header. That's just a rectangle. What is this one? Oh yeah, that's the one we want. Okay, see that little question mark right there? We could just call this a back arrow. In this header, I don't think we really need that, so we're going to delete that, clean it up a little bit. This rectangle 3, I'm not quite sure what that is. Maybe that's the background? Yeah, I think it's the background. All right, that's fine. We'll leave it in there. Okay, so let's save that. And again, that's called register screen. We'll go back to Supernova and let's refresh our project and pull it in. So now notice I'm not doing another import. I'm not opening up a whole new Supernova project because I don't want to lose all the work that I've done so far. So I'm just going to refresh and pull in the new screen. Okay, here's the register screen. That's the only one I want right now. So I'll import that. Okay, and we should have a new screen. If we come here and register, there it is. Now I can go to navigation and I can hook up that navigation from create new account to the register screen. Maybe I'll just stick it down here. So let's right click here, push with, and notice the ones that I already used, it doesn't give me the option to use them again. So the create new account is the only one left. And then I'm going to connect it to the register screen. There we go. Maybe we'll drag it over here just so it looks nicer. Okay, so let's test that out and see how that navigation works. So if I click create new account, it goes to the create account screen, the register screen. Okay, everything seems to be working okay. And I didn't go through and convert components for all the other elements, but that's something you would normally do. You'd pull in all the screens, convert all the components, add the animation, and then you'd move on to navigation, hook everything up there. And then once you're done, you're ready to export. So maybe in this case, I want to export to Android. And it's really easy. You know, I have the 3 screens right here, and I can just double check these settings, make sure everything is okay. And we'll create a new project and just export that. And then here, I already had a folder called project. Maybe I should give it a better name here, Memento. Okay, and then we have a project for an Android app. Now, later on, your designer might add another screen because, you know, iterations go by, new features are being added. So let's add one more screen. We'll go back to our sketch document here, and maybe we'll do the, let's see, let's check out some of these things here. Can't sign in, reset password. Yeah, let's set up that screen. Create new password, okay. So again, I'm just going to click on refresh. We'll pull up that document again. And the only one we want is the reset password. So I'll just click on that and import it. Okay, and now we have our new screen here. So let's go back to the sign in screen and let's hook up that navigation where it says can't sign in, reset password. So I'll go to the navigation pane and let's put this in a better place here. Maybe we'll stick it next to here. That seems to be a logical flow. Right click on here, push with, can't sign in, reset, and then we'll connect it to the reset password screen. All right, then let's preview it, just make sure it works. Okay, can't sign in, reset password. We click on that, it goes to the reset password screen. All right, great. Now you want to add this new screen to your existing project because we already exported the project. So what you can do in this case, we export it to Android. So what I'll do is I'll just say files over here and let's deselect all. And the only one we want is the reset password. That's the only one our project is missing. So at this point, I can just export it as a separate file. From here, you can just export it anywhere. And then you'll want to open up your Android project and add it to your existing project. Now, another option is your developers can take just what they need by looking at the code. So let's open up Codex here. And if they just want to take part of this or all of it, then they can also do that too. That's just another option besides exporting just this screen. And you see, here's a good example of why it's important to name your components with a meaningful name, because this group 5 view, like I don't even know what that is. So this is just another reason why, naming is important, because you don't want things like this, group 5 copy 3 view in your project. All right. Okay, so that's it for part 4. That was an example demonstration where we downloaded a sketch document from the internet. We touched it up so it could be imported into Supernova. And then in Supernova, we identified components, we set up some animation, we hooked up the navigation, and then we exported it to a target platform. In this case, it was Android, but you can also export it to iOS, Flutter, or React Native. Now, if you've watched this series and you haven't downloaded Supernova yet, then I encourage you to get your free copy now. You'll find the link down in the description below. Try it out. If you have any questions, join that Slack group, and the developers are pretty responsive. And there's also a community that can help you there as well. All right, thanks, guys.